In his annual State of the Nation speech, which took place on Thursday, Russian President Vladimir Putin took aim at the West by threatening to use nuclear weapons against NATO countries if they send forces to assist in defending Ukraine against a Russian triumph. In a speech that was mostly focused on Russia's domestic problems, Vladimir Putin gave a stern warning to the Federal Assembly of Russia. He threatened to launch retaliation strikes against Western nations in the event that they launched attacks on Russian soil. In addition, he warned of tragic consequences in the event that NATO forces were ever sent to Ukraine. They must understand that we also have weapons that can hit targets on their territory, he stated. It is apparent that all of this poses a significant risk of a conflict that might involve the use of nuclear weapons and the annihilation of civilization. Do they not understand that? Is there a presence of foreign forces in Ukraine? There they are already present. He went on to say that Western leaders believed that war was a cartoon, and he went on to say that Russia's strategic nuclear forces are in a state of full readiness. His brag was that Russia's most modern hypersonic nuclear-capable weaponry, such as the Kinzhal and Zircon missiles, had been utilized in Ukraine, while others were in the final stages of testing. He said that these missiles were among the most advanced weapons in Russia. The warning that Putin issued on Thursday was particularly severe, despite the fact that he has previously intimated that Russia is prepared to use its nuclear weapons. They are talking about the possible deployment of NATO military contingents to Ukraine, Putin said, referring to the comments made by French President Emmanuel Macron this week. Macron had suggested that the deployment of foreign forces to Ukraine remained an option, which is something that some NATO leaders, including German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, have since contradicted. Putin's statement was in response to Macron's comments. The fate of those who had previously dispatched their troops to the area of our nation is something that we remember deeply. Now, invaders will face much more severe consequences, Putin said, adding that Russia would also bolster its western military sector now that Sweden and Finland, which shares a long land border with Russia, have joined the alliance. Finland and Sweden share a border that is over 2,000 kilometers long. As a result of the Hungarian parliament's approval of Sweden's application to join NATO on Monday, Sweden was able to overcome the last obstacle that stood in its way of joining the alliance. Following Russia's invasion of Ukraine 2 years ago, both Sweden and Finland submitted applications to become members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. His audience consisted of members of the Russian military, members of the Russian parliament, and members of the public who had been handpicked, such as sports stars, film directors, and patriotic volunteers. As Putin touched on his familiar anti-Western themes, including his accusation that Western nations were determined to destroy Russia from within, his audience was comprised of these individuals. In the course of the president's address, there were members of the crowd who were attentive and took notes. Others laughed and applauded in response to the predetermined cues, while others stared blankly into space. Additionally, the address was shown live on advertising screens located in shopping malls all around the country, in addition to being shown in movie theater chains. A moment of silence was observed for Russian soldiers who were fighting on the front line at the beginning of the address, which lasted for somewhat more than 2 hours. The vast majority of people were in favor of the special military operation that was being carried out. Putin, using the nomenclature of the Kremlin for the conflict in Ukraine, stated that people were adamant about this decision. It is highly likely that the Russian leader will continue to hold power for the foreseeable future. The Kremlin has manipulated the presidential election that will take place next month in order to exclude genuine opponents from the race. As a part of the Kremlin's endeavor to give the idea of democratic competition, without posing any threat to Putin's power, just 3 other candidates have been permitted to run for office. On the other hand, 2 candidates who opposed the war were both disqualified from running for office. All 3 have expressed their support for Putin. On the eve of the burial of his primary political foe, Alexei Navalny, which will take place in Moscow on Friday, the address happens to be delivered at a politically delicate moment. In a statement released on Wednesday, Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of Navalny, accused Vladimir Putin of ordering the murder of her husband and of blocking the family from hiring a private hall where his coffin could be put out for a public farewell prior to the funeral. It was reported on Thursday by Navalny's aides that the family had not been able to acquire a hearse to transport his body, despite the fact that the burial was scheduled to take place less than 24 hours before. the first time we tried to book a funeral hall to say our final goodbyes to Alexei, we were denied permission. Kira Yarmish, who is the spokeswoman for Navalny, posted a message on social media in which she stated, "Now, agents tell us that not a single hearse has agreed to transport the body. Unknown individuals phone each of the companies and threaten them in an effort to prevent them from transporting Alexei's body to any location or location. After being prevented from competing against Putin in the presidential election of 2018, being poisoned by operatives of the Federal Security Service in 2020, being imprisoned in 2021, and passing away on February 16th in the Polar Wolf prison, Navalny was unable to run for president. Putin expressed his rising confidence that Russia will emerge victorious in Ukraine following Russia's recent takeover of the town of Avdiivka and the adjoining village of Lestochkin. Both of these villages were virtually flattened as a result of months of Russian shelling throughout Ukraine. A $95 billion United States security assistance package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan has been stalled in Congress after Republican Speaker Mike Johnson, Lay, sent the House on a 2-week vacation without bringing the bill to a vote. This has further increased the level of uncertainty regarding Ukraine's ability to prevail against Russia. The failure of Ukraine's counteroffensive in the previous year has also contributed to this uncertainty. Subscribe now to learn more. Thanks for watching.